back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I hope to read in the month of November. I have a little bit of issue in November a lot of times where I'm coming off that Victober high with all the Victorian books that I have been reading, and then a lot of times I get kind of slumpy in November, and I don't know if that's because Victober reading's just so good or if I just feel kind of burnt out because I tend to overload myself in Victober. But I've noticed this is a pattern for me for the past couple of years. So I have tried to select books this month that I'm really excited about reading in the hopes that that kind of staves off that slump. In addition, November is nonfiction November, and I will certainly be participating in that as well. And one nonfiction book I will certainly be reading in November is The Shepherd's Life by James Rebanks. This is actually for my in-person book club and my friend Jennifer. This was one of her favorite books of the year last year, and so it was suggested as a group read this year, and I am so excited to read this. This is a memoir, which you might be able to guess from the title is written from the perspective of a shepherd in the Lakes District in England. And the things that I've heard said about it kind of give me James Herriot vibes a little bit. So that's kind of my hope going in, but I'm also trying to hold that a bit loosely because James Herriot is like my ultimate comfort read. And so I don't want to like put this too high up and it doesn't quite meet that, but I am so excited to read it. Krista from Books and Jams is hosting another one of her nonfiction read-alongs during the month of November. She's been doing them quarterly this year, and I've as yet not been able to participate in any of them because life has just been too crazy. But I will be participating in November's, and she is reading Adorning the Dark by Andrew Peterson. This is a book I've wanted to read for years, and I actually remember Chantel Reads All Day talking about this book like a while ago, like years ago probably, and how much she really appreciated it. And I've had it on my list for a really long time. We've really enjoyed the Wingfeather saga. We've really enjoyed some of Andrew Peterson's music. So I just like really appreciate him as a creative. And so I'm really excited to read this book, which I think is about creatives and how we can use the gift of creation and being a creative to bring light to dark places. I have a couple of other nonfiction options that I forgot to bring in with me. So one of them is Dickens Land, which I actually started during Victober. And at the time of me filming this, I don't know if I'm going to finish it by the end of October or not, but it is one I would like to continue. Then I also received as a gift from Lindsay, Mythmakers by, I think John Hendricks, I think is his name. He wrote The Faithful Spy, which is a graphic biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And it's really interestingly laid out with a lot of really interesting artwork, but some pages have infographics, some pages are actually laid out in a graphic novel format. And so it's got like a lot of different elements to it where it's not fully just a graphic novel. It's got like a mix of art styles and a lot of text as well, and it's just really beautifully done. Mythmakers is about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, and I really want to read this, especially because my British literature class at our homeschool group will be reading The Hobbit during the month of November, so it feels like the perfect time to squeeze this in if I can. I'm currently borrowing a book from my friend Whitney called An Everlasting Meal, Cooking with Economy and Grace by Tamar Adler, and this is one that Whitney highly praised, and then she brought to me to borrow, and I've had it on my shelf for a while, planning to read it during Nonfiction November. So hopefully I will get to this. It's kind of a different vibe from the other books that I have on here, and that I have like a Christian nonfiction, and then I have some biographies and memoirs. So this is like very, very different from those. And the cool thing is that Whitney tabbed it. And so I have like the spots where she tabbed. And I love borrowing books from people where I can see where they've underlined or where they've tabbed like things that were really meaningful or interesting to them. So hope to pick this one up in November. Okay, moving on from nonfiction, I have some classics here and some fantasy here. I know that is really surprising because those are generally the genres that I read lately. So we will be concluding our Mist Along, which is our read through of all the Mistborn books in the month of November, by reading The Lost Metal, which is the biggest one of Era 2 of Mistborn. So I'm really excited to read this, see how it concludes. Our live show will be in December. So yeah, I'm really excited to finally finish Era 2 and like wrap up all the Mistborn reading. And I've read so much Sanderson this year, but this will be done in time for me to pick up Wind and Truth when that comes out in December. The other fantasy that I intend on picking up in the month of November is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. And I really don't know anything about this book. I know like lots of people really like it. I know that Courtney reads this annually every year in October, and my friend Christy actually has really highly recommended this to me as well. And so every month on my Patreon, I take a book that has been recommended by one of my patrons and I do a spoilery vlog, like sharing all my thoughts as I'm reading it. And then they get that at the end of the month. So the book that I'm doing this month will be The Scorpio Races. Christy said that November's like the perfect time to read it, so I have saved it for November. Speaking of my Patreon, we are also reading a book together during the month of November, and we will be reading Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is actually the Cranford Chronicles, so it actually has like multiple stories in here besides just Cranford. It has Mr. Harrison's Confessions, Cranford, and My Lady Ludlow. So the plan is just to read Cranford. Will I read the other ones? Maybe. So far, the only Gaskell that I have read is North and South, which I've actually read twice, and I didn't like it that much the first time. I liked it more the second time, but it still isn't a favorite of mine. But I've still really wanted to pick up more Gaskell, so really excited that this one won the poll to read in the month of November, because when I've talked to people about this, it has like really good like cozy holiday vibes. So I think it'll be perfect in November. I will also be continuing my read through of Kristen Lavrenstatter with Dia, and man, we read book 1 in October, and we'll be reading book 2 in November, and then the third book in December, with the hope and goal of finishing this entire behemoth by the end of the year. Obviously, my wrap up is not yet up for October, but at the time of filming this, I really liked book 1. I actually haven't quite finished it yet. I'm really close. So I don't even have like a final rating on book 1, but I've really enjoyed it. I think the writing style is really beautiful. We have followed Kristen from childhood up through, you know, young adulthood at this point. So it's been really good, and the writing is just gorgeous and immersive, and I've really enjoyed it. If you watch my end of the year tag, you will know that I am reading one of my most anticipated, if not my very most anticipated book of the year in the month of November, and that is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. If you saw my favorites of last year, you'll know that my favorite fictional book of 2023 was Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, and it was my first Anne Bronte. And so I am really excited to give The Tenant of Wildfell Hall a try. It is longer than Anne Bronte, but I don't know if I know anyone that likes Anne Bronte more than they like The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. So I don't know. I have really high hopes. I'm thinking this is going to be a 5-star, potentially a favorite of the year. Am I overhyping it? I hope not, because Agnes Grey was a dark horse for me, and that I didn't have like really high expectations or really any expectations at all. So it kind of came in and like swept the legs out from under me, and I was like, oh my gosh. So going into The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, having been surprised by Agnes Grey, I don't know if I'm overhyping it. So time will tell. Well, those are all of my definitive plans for the month of November. I am also hoping to read an Amy Tan book with my older sister, because I tend to read Amy Tan every November for some reason, and I don't know why, but it just kind of works out that way. But we haven't decided on one yet at the time of this video. So there will likely be an Amy Tan this month as well, but again, these are like the more definitive plans, with a few loosey-goosey plans in terms of nonfiction November, that I have like a good like 3 or 4 extra books in here that I'm just like, oh, dip in and out and see how I'm feeling, with some very concrete plans as well. I'd love to hear what your plans are for the month of November. Are you participating in any readathons? Are you participating in Nonfiction November? Joining in with Krista's nonfiction read-along, or other read-alongs? There's always so many happening on BookTube. If you've read any of the books that I'm planning on reading this month, I'd love to hear your thoughts on those as well. And I would love to hear what you are most excited to read in the month of November. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.